really being a business owner is about taking charge of your finances in a way that drives the results you want to see. And sometimes those of us that have kind of become entrepreneurs by accident and maybe don't have a business background, it all feels very scary and foreign. But there are some simple things that you can put into place in your business, in your practice, that can help you get the result you want without needing to go back to college and get a new education.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 399 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and so glad you've joined us. And we're just one episode away from episode number 400. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that here in a minute, but I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest on this particular episode, Kristin Meador, and we are going to dive into talking about numbers. And that's a theme you've heard from me over the years about the importance of knowing your numbers and understanding the financial side of private practice. But Kristin is a certified public accountant, CPA, based in Knoxville, Tennessee, and you're going to get to hear how she helps folks with their practices. And we really dive in deep around the importance of profitability. I'll say it right here in a minute. But anyway, I'm looking forward to you hearing from Kristin in this conversation. Because it's such an important piece of running a private practice is understanding the whole financial side. So, as I mentioned, we're getting ready to have episode number 400, which is quite a milestone for me. It's hard to believe I've done 400 episodes. That means 400 weeks of episodes since 2017. And I'm so grateful to so many people for helping me do this over the years, because I haven't done it by myself. And big shout out to my assistant and trusty sidekick, Rachel, for the help she's given me over the years. And you'll hear more about that in episode number 400. But one of the things that you'll notice when this episode comes out is that we're going to have a little bit different look to the podcast, if you could call it that. I know it's audio, but we've got new cover art, and we've also got some new intro music and that kind of thing that's coming. And it's going to be a great episode, because I've gotten the help from a lot of my friends and people that have been on the podcast over the last few years to join in with this celebration of the 400th episode. So before we get to my conversation with Kristin, though, one of the things I would like to invite you to do, if you're interested in working with me and doing some consulting or coaching, that's something I'm always interested in doing, and I just absolutely love working with people one-on-one and helping them to either start their practice or grow their practice or scale their practice. And so you can find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com. And if you'll just click on that link there at the top, on the button that just says coaching and consulting, and that'll take you to the landing page where you can find out more about those services. So, so be sure and check it out. And also, before we get to my conversation with Kristin, love for you to hear from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes, along with some words from one of our members of the PsychCraft Network.
Hey there, Daniel Fava here, and if you don't know me, I'm the host of the Private Practice Elevation podcast, where I share online marketing strategies and interviews to help private practice owners attract more clients and scale their businesses. The Private Practice Elevation podcast is part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. If you haven't discovered the Private Practice Elevation podcast, you can find it wherever you listen to your podcast. I'd love for you to join me as we explore topics like building an effective website for your private practice, search engine optimization, content marketing, and copywriting, as well as my conversations with experienced private practice owners about scaling a practice, outsourcing, team leadership, and all things that will help you elevate your business and create the life you love. Be sure to check us out at privatepracticeelevation.com for resources and content to help you in your online marketing journey.
Rachel here with a quick shout out to TherapyNotes, the EHR that Gordon uses and loves for running his group practice. If you've ever been looking for a solid, all-in-one platform to manage your notes, scheduling, billing, and even secure client messaging, this is it. Gordon's been using TherapyNotes for years, and it's honestly made a huge difference in how smooth things run behind the scenes. He's always saying how it saves him time and keeps everything organized, and as a practice owner, that's huge. And get this, they've just rolled out Therapy Fuel, which is an amazing suite of AI tools that help write your notes faster. You can generate progress notes from session summaries or even from transcriptions. You can also create contact notes straight from secure messages and automatically summarize client history forms. Basically, it's like having a little documentation assistant built right in. Plus, TherapyNotes is always adding new features like automated payments, secondary insurance billing, and a growing library of outcome measures. And if you ever get stuck, their customer service is phenomenal. Seriously, you can call or email 24/7 and talk to someone who actually knows what they're doing. So, if you've ever been thinking about switching or just getting started, now's a great time. Head over to therapynotes.com, click Start My Free Trial, and use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. All right, back to the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really happy for you to get to know today Kristin Meador. Welcome, Kristin. Glad you're here.
Thanks so much, Gordon. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, glad for us to connect. And Kristin is local to me, I guess you could say. She's in Knoxville, Tennessee. She's a CPA and in practice as an accountant there. And Kristin, as I begin with everyone, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah, sure. So as Gordon mentioned, I'm a CPA, which stands for Certified Public Accountant, and I work with small businesses, and I love doing that. And recently I have found a niche to specifically therapy practices, and it grew really naturally. I got my first few therapy practice clients, realized I loved working with these folks, and kind of have expanded that niche from there. But I am based in Knoxville, Tennessee. I work with clients nationwide. And in fact, I like to travel a lot myself. So about 3 or 4 months of the year, I'm usually international in Europe or Mexico. I've got, of course, my favorite destinations around the world. So I definitely have this mobile office going on, which works really well. And we've grown Gradient Accounting, my accounting practice, to a team of about 5 of us now. So we do bookkeeping, tax prep and planning, and business advisory. And really, that's kind of where we're growing a lot, is because we realize that small businesses need more than just a once-a-year check-in. They need that advocate by their side, helping to drive their strategy and growth.
Right. Yeah, and I know one of the things that for most of the folks that are listening to this podcast is business and finance is not something that we necessarily get a lot of training in. And so I think it's real important to have folks like you that can kind of guide us through that whole process and just really kind of talk about, I know one thing is just about profitability and just being able to make a profit and also know if you're, charging enough or that sort of thing.
Yes, that is key. It's so much more than just filing an annual tax return. Really, being a business owner is about taking charge of your finances in a way that drives the results you want to see. And sometimes those of us that have kind of become entrepreneurs by accident and maybe don't have a business background, it all feels very scary and foreign. But there are some simple things that you can put into place in your business, in your practice, that can help you get the result you want without needing to go back to college and get a new education.
Yes. So I guess that kind of opens the door. Tell us what some of those things are that we can make sense for us to put in place that maybe folks might not think about.
Yeah, great. Well, when I first worked with therapy practice owners, my focus is on just making sure that they have numbers that we can trust to make decisions with. So having those fundamental things down, like some sort of bookkeeping, whether it's in a software like QuickBooks Online or Xero, or whether it's just on a spreadsheet. For some practice owners, that's really like where they need to be, and that's okay. But having clean numbers and books is really important. Because what we can do is we can use those books to start making decisions and creating some other financial processes in your business. So one thing that we implement with our therapy practice owners is a system called Profit First. Have you heard of Profit First before?
Oh, yes, very familiar with it. In fact, I had Mike Michalowicz on this podcast several years ago. And so, and I've met Mike and I got to spend some time with him. So, I'm a big honored of Profit First.
Yeah, and we're huge fans of Mike's work, and we're Profit First professionals at our firm. So basically what Profit First is it creates a simple system to saving for different things in your business. And by doing that, you're able to pay yourself first in a very sustainable way. So what I mean by that is probably a lot of our mothers or grandmothers had kind of that envelope budgeting system where you get the paycheck twice a month and then you put a little bit towards rent and utilities and whatever, and you set that money aside for those intended purposes. So essentially with Profit First, that's what we do for our businesses. So we set money aside into different accounts. So we open up a few different bank accounts. So setting money specifically aside for tax savings, specifically aside for business expenses, specifically aside to pay yourself. And having like money hygiene and habits like that is so important and takes a lot of the stress out of the business ownership and the running of the business.
Right. And I know one of the things that I liked about Profit First is to make it simpler. I think when people think of budgeting or, coming up with the numbers that they are going to spend, the problem for therapy practices is our income flow or our cash flow can vary month to month, just depending on the number of clients. And by using I like to refer to it as an allocation system that's based on percentages, it just makes it simpler to know what to kind of budget, if you want to use that word, with things.
Absolutely. And I have the same struggle in my business because we get a big infusion of cash around tax season. But a lot of times that money has to kind of sustain us through the rest of the year. So there's some things we can do with different accounts and setting money aside to where we have this slush fund, so to speak, to help sustain our slower periods. And that's the biggest thing. Like as business owners, we don't want to have to cut our pay willy-nilly when the business takes a small dip. We want to be able to kind of pay ourselves a stable salary, like if we were just a regular employee. And Profit First really enables us to do that.
Right.
And big thing business owners get into once they start scaling and building a practice is your expenses can really balloon without you really knowing. So with most of the clients that sign on with us, we spend some time doing just a detailed expense analysis and trying to trim the fat, so to speak. And often we find thousands of dollars in savings for things that really don't affect their business. So that's something really important to do. What I recommend if you want to do this yourself is to print out your bank statements and do an analysis called CRK. So take a highlighter. One color is your C, which means cut. So highlight the things that you think you can cut. One color is your R, which is reduce. So highlight things you can reduce. And then one color is keep. So that's the things you need, you can't live without. And highlight those a different color. And then schedule some time to come back and actually make those changes. But that's a really easy way to kind of start to tackle that exercise.
Yeah, right. What are some typical things that you find that people can easily cut that maybe they don't think about?
Software. There's a lot of redundancies with a lot of the software that we pay for. And a lot of shiny object software out there too, where it's like, oh, I think I need that. And then you don't really end up using it. Or maybe there's a different tier that you can drop down to and you're not even really aware. So that's a big one. I would say that often we have to have conversations with clients about just like their team makeup. So sometimes we see like a bit of organizational bloat. So clients have people on their team that maybe they don't really need or aren't really worth what they're paying them. And obviously, like, my job is not to tell someone to fire someone, right? But it's important to have that thought exercise and to bring those things up, because often when you're growing a practice with multiple clinicians, like, payroll is going to be your biggest expense. So just making sure you've got close tabs on that is really important.
Right. Are there other things that people maybe might be spending money on that they're, besides software, that they might not recognize as, okay, this is something I can maybe cut or reduce, kind of thing?
I would say a lot of business owners, and I'm a really big advocate for coaching. So I don't want to put any shame or blame on that. In fact, I do coaching. Like, I know you do coaching, Gordon, but I think a lot of business owners aren't clear when they hire a coach. So maybe they hire one too early, or one that's not in their industry, or one that charges way too much. And so thinking about your investment and things like that critically before you kind of sign on the dotted line to pay $5,000 a month to a coach that might not get you the ROI that you need.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's I'm of course, yeah, as you are too, Kristin, I'm a big proponent on getting mentorship and getting help from people that have had the experience and had the life experience, I guess is the best way to put it, of knowing how to run a practice and have run into things. As I like to say, I've learned a lot of stuff the hard way, and I don't like for other people to have to do that. But
exactly.
Yeah. Another area I know that we had kind of highlighted was knowing what to charge, knowing what your fees are, and what sort of guidance can you give around that?
Yeah, that's huge, especially in you guys' line of work, because, I think that there's a bit of pressure to charge low prices. And I think a lot of therapists get into practice to help people, right? So raising your prices can feel very, very hard. And you feel like, oh my gosh, I know this person needs me, but I know they can't pay this fee. So often there's a hesitancy to raise prices. And unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, every year, all of our vendors and expense providers are raising their prices. So really, we should be raising prices every single year, no matter what. And I know that hurts to hear, but it's really true. And then I think that it's also hard for practice owners that do take insurance, because often you're at the mercy of their rates and their payment terms. And so there's a real consideration with how much in your practice you want self-pay clients versus will take insurance, and what insurances you are going to take. So what I've developed, and I am giving this away completely for free for this audience, is a 3-minute pricing checkup. So you can put in basically how much you want to earn as the owner, put in the a few other inputs like, the rates that you charge for self-pay clients, for insured clients, how much you would pay your team members if you have any team members that are also seeing clients. And then it spits out kind of are you priced okay or are you priced too low? And so someone was interested in downloading that, they could go to gradientaccounting.com/therapists with an S on the end
Okay.
and download that tool for free.
Yeah, good. We'll have links in the show notes, but one of the things with you mentioned insurance versus self-pay, and I think that is always a hard decision for a lot of people to make. I know in my own practice, that was something I kept going back and forth on, and I think you just have to take a lot of things into consideration. And the big one for me is just knowing the demographics of the area that we live in and the clients that we serve. It really was important for us to be able to accept insurance, but it doesn't mean that you have to accept every insurance.
That's
And
right.
I think that's one thing is to look at, what's the predominant insurance that most people carry in your area. And also just picking the ones that are going to tend to pay a little better. Fortunately, I think at least a trend I'm seeing is that insurance companies are finally kind of coming in line with paying really what we're worth a little bit more. It's never going to be what you could get for self-pay, but but I think, and also knowing the numbers around that as far as being able to figure out your profitability based on those numbers, and what your average per session rate is, even though what your real session rate is might be a lot higher.
This podcast is supported by Strawberry.me. Be honest, are you happy with your job? Or are you stuck in one you've outgrown or never wanted in the first place? Sure, you can probably list reasons for staying, but are they really just excuses for not leaving? Let a career coach from Strawberry.me help you get unstuck. Discover the benefits of having a dedicated career coach in your corner. Go to strawberry.me/nextstep to claim a special offer.
From unsolved mysteries to unexplained phenomena, from comedy gold to relationship fails, Amazon Music's got the most ad-free top podcasts, included with Prime. Because the only thing that should interrupt your listening is, well, nothing. Download the Amazon Music app today.
I think that's all so helpful because that's how you can make business decisions as you grow and scale your practice. It's really hard to commit to paying another clinician when you don't really know what your kind of fully weighted session rate is. So it's important to know that.
Right. One of the things you mentioned, the spreadsheets, one of the things that I do, I try to stay on top of at least quarterly, is I created a spreadsheet that just it breaks it down into what is the profitability per session, and also, what is the expense per session, and all of that sort of thing, so that you can kind of keep an eye on that number to know if you need to go up on your rates or whatever.
Yes, that is such a good idea, Gordon. That's so helpful.
Right. It's and one of the things too, and not to get too much on a tangent here, Kristin, but one of the things that has worked well, at least in my practice, is we've for folks that don't have insurance, we offer a sliding scale fee. But the thing about that is that our lowest rate on the sliding scale fee is close to or equal to our average per session rate. So that makes it easier to kind of do the numbers and know what you can do with profit first and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's like your floor is that average that you need to get to keep your business running. Like that's a great thing, because if you can go that, it's more upside, more profit.
Yeah. You want to say maybe a little bit about paying for, if you're a group practice, knowing what to pay your people, and what's a good strategy there?
Yeah, that's quite a interesting analysis, because I think that it's really hard when you're growing and scaling your practice to commit to a full-time salary, right? Like that's a lot of money a year, especially when you factor in payroll taxes and benefits if you're going to offer that.
Mm-hmm.
So I often recommend, if scaling practices can kind of dip their toe in the water, so maybe start with a part-time employee and see how that goes. Maybe start with someone that is willing to accept an hourly rate instead of biting off a salary. So things like that, just to get yourself used to the mechanics of paying payroll, and consider doing that every time you make a new hire. Like, it doesn't really get any easier, right? It's still scary when you commit to a new person. So could they start part-time, so you can kind of test them out and then flex with you from there. And then I always say, if you can, try to set aside, before you hire someone, set aside 3 months of their pay and basically pretend like you're already paying them for 3 months, and put it into a savings account. And then when they come on board, you've got 3 months of their pay saved. So if something were to go haywire, you could still pay them to weather that. And you can do it because you've been doing it for a few months. So those are my biggest pieces of advice around hiring someone in your practice. Did that answer your question, Gordon?
Yeah. And I think one of the things to look at too is, as again, particularly for insurance practices, you've got that variability in what you're getting paid per session. So you really have to you really do need to know your numbers well in order to know what to pay. And, at least in my practice, we pay, it's not necessarily it's a graduated system based on the volume of clients that the clinician sees, but we use a flat rate per clinical per clinical hour. And so that makes it easier to kind of calculate and plan ahead and that sort of thing. And it's all based on, again, those numbers of knowing what we're bringing in, what our average per session rate is, and what our monthly costs are.
Absolutely. And on average, like, for example, if you determine that your average revenue per session is $150 or something like that, don't think, okay, I can pay a clinician 75% of that, because that's too high, right? You've got all of company expenses, you've got to factor in profit and your pay, you've got to factor in taxes. So typically what we see is that per session amount you can pay is more like 35% of your revenue per session. So it's a lot lower than you might think.
That's why it's so important to know your numbers and have people like you, Kristin, that can help guide people through that. And so, yeah. So, well, Kristin, I guess I need to be mindful of your time and all of this. And I know we could probably spend all day talking about these different topics, but tell folks how they can get in touch with you and the different things that you're offering for people.
So my firm's called Gradient Accounting, and our website is gradientaccounting.com. Like I said, if you were to go to gradientaccounting.com/therapist, you can download that free 3-minute pricing checkup. And right now we're taking clients in our full service package, which is basically all you need. So it's bookkeeping, taxes, and business consulting. So we can have conversations like this specific to your business. I'm really excited to connect with anyone that wants to connect and help you build and grow your practice.
I will say that having a good CPA is always a good return on the investment, because the people I've consulted with over the years, one of the things that is just heartbreaking is for them to get towards the end of the year, particularly at tax time, and realize they don't have enough money to pay their taxes. And that's just always it's about staying on top of it and understanding all of that. And then just also being able to support the lifestyle that they want to keep for themselves.
Yes.
It all has to do with knowing your numbers.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, Gordon. I feel like this stuff doesn't have to be as stressful as it sometimes feels. So if you're feeling like you're in this stress cycle around your taxes and your finances, reach out to someone for help. I think it's important to know you don't have to go at it alone.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kristin, hopefully we can have another conversation again. And again, folks, we'll have the links to gradient accounting and all of that sort of thing in our show notes and show summary so you can get to it easily. And so again, thanks, Kristin, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Gordon. It's been great.
Well, big thanks to Kristin for joining me on the podcast. And be sure and check out her things. As I mentioned, there are links in the show notes and the show summary to find out more about the services she offers and what she's doing with her firm, Gradient Accounting, and that's gradientaccounting.com. And again, you'll find links in the show notes and the show summary. And also, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They have been with me for several years now, and I'm grateful to them for supporting the podcast here. One of the things about putting on a podcast is there's some cost involved, and so through their support and through their sponsorship, we're able to keep this going and keep it out there for you all. And so big thanks to them. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers, and they're who I use in my practice and have used them for several years now as well. And one of the things I love about TherapyNotes is that they are constantly improving things and making their product better. And so now they've got AI capabilities, which is just a huge time saver as far as creating your session or progress notes. And I know I love that feature, and I know several of the people in my practice love it as well. So be sure and check them out, practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And when you go there, if you want to just try them out for 2 months for free, use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months. And also be sure to come back next week for episode number 400. It's hard to believe that we're that far down the line. And it's a special episode, and got a lot of my friends joining me on that podcast, and you'll get to hear from them and some tips on running your private practice. So take care, folks, and do take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. We'll be back with you next week. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.
Fraud costs businesses millions and erodes customer trust, but you can stay ahead. Vonage Protection Suite, with its network-powered APIs, shields your business from costly account takeovers, identity theft, and fraudulent attacks. We provide seamless, secure verification across all customer messaging channels, from SMS to voice. Plus, with tools like silent authentication, your customers get a smooth, hurdle-free experience. Protect your reputation, revenue, and customers with Vonage. Learn more at Vonage.com.